a cinematic story of the Cuban Missile Crisis. 13 days that shook the world. October 1962. The world was breathing normally. Children were going to school. Families were eating dinner. People were laughing in parks, watching television, dreaming about tomorrow. And yet, hidden beneath the surface of everyday life, something terrifying was unfolding. A secret so dangerous that if one wrong decision were made, cities would vanish, millions would die, and civilization itself could disappear in fire. This is not fiction. This is the story of 13 days when humanity stood on the edge of nuclear war. The story of fear, power, secrets, and impossible choices. This is 13 days that shook the world. The Cold War had already divided the planet. On one side stood the United States. On the other stood the Soviet Union. Neither trusted the other. Neither wanted to appear weak. Both possessed weapons powerful enough to destroy humanity many times over. For years, the rivalry grew stronger. Every scientific achievement became a competition. Every military move became a threat. Every nation was forced to choose sides. The atmosphere was tense. But in 1959, something happened that changed everything. A revolutionary leader named Fidel Castro seized power in Cuba. The island nation lay only 90 miles from the coast of America. At first, many people were uncertain about Castro, but soon he aligned himself with America's greatest enemy, the Soviet Union. Suddenly, the Cold War was no longer taking place across oceans. It had arrived at America's doorstep. Washington was alarmed. American leaders feared that Cuba could become a military base for Soviet influence. In 1961, the United States secretly supported an invasion by Cuban exiles. The operation became known as the Bay of Pigs. It was supposed to overthrow Castro. Instead, it became a humiliating failure. The invasion collapsed. The world watched America stumble, and Castro emerged stronger than ever. But perhaps most importantly, he no longer trusted the United States. He feared another invasion, and so did Moscow. Far away, inside the Kremlin, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev was thinking. America possessed nuclear missiles in Europe, missiles close to Soviet borders. If war erupted, Moscow could be destroyed within minutes. Khrushchev wanted balance. He wanted leverage, and perhaps he wanted to shock the Americans. So he proposed a daring plan. Secretly placed nuclear missiles in Cuba, right under America's nose. The operation was enormous. Thousands of Soviet soldiers crossed the Atlantic in secrecy. Missiles, launch equipment, radar systems, and nuclear warheads were shipped quietly. The soldiers were told not to speak. The ships disguised their cargo. The Soviet government denied everything. Meanwhile, construction crews worked day and night across Cuba. Missile sites began to appear. Long launch pads stretched across the countryside. Concrete bunkers rose from the earth. Huge rockets waited silently, and no one in Washington yet understood the danger. But secrets rarely stay hidden forever. On October 14, 1962, an American U-2 spy plane flew high above Cuba. The mission seemed routine. The pilot photographed roads, buildings, military camps, then returned home. The photographs were sent for analysis. Experts carefully examined each image. At first, nothing unusual. Then, someone froze. The shape of launch sites, the size of the equipment, the positioning. There was no mistake. Soviet nuclear missiles were in Cuba. The information reached the White House. And suddenly, everything changed. President John F. Kennedy stared at the photographs. The missiles were capable of striking Washington, New York, Chicago, almost every major American city. In minutes, no warning, no defense. The president understood the terrifying truth. If the missiles became operational, America would live with a nuclear gun pointed directly at its head. Kennedy immediately called a secret meeting. The room filled with generals, advisors, cabinet members, military strategists. The atmosphere was tense. Some argued for immediate airstrikes, destroy the missile sites. end the threat. Others warned an attack could kill Soviet personnel, and if Soviet soldiers died, Moscow might retaliate. Then America would respond, and within hours, the world could descend into nuclear war. The arguments became fierce. Military commanders demanded action. Time was running out. Every day, the missile sites became stronger. Every hour increased the danger. Kennedy listened carefully. He asked questions. He challenged assumptions. He remained calm, but inside, he knew he was carrying the weight of the world. One mistake could end civilization. Finally, Kennedy chose a different strategy. Not invasion, not bombing, a naval blockade. American warships would surround Cuba. No Soviet ships carrying military equipment would be allowed through. The United States called it a quarantine, but everyone understood its meaning. It was a warning. Stop now, or face war. On October 22, 1962, Kennedy addressed the nation. Millions of Americans sat silently beside their televisions. Families gathered in living rooms. People sensed something was wrong. The president appeared on screen. Serious, controlled, determined. Then he spoke. The Soviet Union had secretly placed nuclear missiles in Cuba. The United States would not tolerate this threat. A naval quarantine was now in effect. Any missile launched from Cuba would be regarded as an attack by the Soviet Union itself. And such an attack would trigger a full retaliatory response. Across America, fear spread instantly. People rushed to grocery stores. Schools practiced nuclear drills. Families built bomb shelters. Children asked frightening questions. Would there be war? Would they survive? No one knew. Meanwhile, in Moscow, Khrushchev listened carefully. He was furious. The blockade was dangerous. If Soviet ships were stopped, humiliated, or fired upon, war could begin at sea. And war at sea could quickly become nuclear war. The world held its breath. American warships waited. Soviet ships continued moving toward Cuba. Radar tracked every movement. Military commanders prepared for battle. Nuclear bombers stood ready. Missiles were armed. Submarines disappeared beneath the ocean. Every minute felt heavier than the last. Then came the moment everyone feared. The Soviet ships approached the blockade line. American commanders waited nervously. Would they continue? Would they break through? Would someone fire? One shot, one misunderstanding, could ignite the most devastating war in human history. The fate of humanity hung on a single decision, and no one, absolutely no one, knew what would happen next. The world waited, not for days, not for weeks, but for a single moment, a single decision, one order, one misunderstanding, one nervous soldier pulling a trigger, and history could end in fire. October 24th, 1962, the Atlantic Ocean looked calm. The waves rolled gently beneath the morning sun. But beneath that calm surface, the most dangerous confrontation in human history was unfolding. American destroyers, cruisers, and aircraft carriers formed a defensive line around Cuba. Their orders were simple: stop Soviet ships carrying military equipment, prevent any more missiles from reaching the island. But behind those simple orders was an impossible question. What if the Soviets refused? What if they kept sailing? Would American ships fire? And if they did, would Moscow answer with nuclear weapons? No one knew. Inside the White House, President John F. Kennedy barely slept. The lights in the Oval Office stayed on late into the night. Maps covered the walls. Military reports arrived every hour. Telephone lines never stopped ringing. Kennedy listened carefully to every piece of information. But even the president, the most powerful man in the world, could not predict what would happen next. Some generals demanded immediate action. Bomb Cuba, destroy the missile sites, invade the island, end the crisis before it was too late. They argued that delay was dangerous. Every day, the Soviet missiles became more operational. Every hour increased the risk. But Kennedy hesitated because he understood something terrible. The Soviet soldiers in Cuba were not alone. Behind them stood an entire superpower. a nation armed with thousands of nuclear weapons. If America attacked Cuba, the Soviet Union might strike Europe. America would strike back, and within hours, entire cities could disappear. Meanwhile, more than 5,000 miles away, inside the Kremlin, Nikita Khrushchev faced his own nightmare. His advisors were divided. Some urged him to stand firm. America had no right to dictate Soviet actions. Others warned that the situation was spinning out of control. A war between the two countries could destroy everything. Khrushchev paced his office, thinking, calculating, wondering how far Kennedy was willing to go. And then, the moment arrived. American radar operators watched Soviet ships moving steadily toward the blockade line. Every mile mattered. Every minute increased the tension. The atmosphere aboard American warships became unbearable. Sailors stood at battle stations. Weapons were prepared. Officers stared at radar screens. No one spoke more than necessary, because everyone understood the next few moments might decide the fate of humanity. The Soviet ships kept coming. Closer, closer, closer. The distance narrowed. 20 miles. 15. 10. American commanders waited for orders. Some held binoculars. Others gripped telephones tightly. The silence felt heavier than thunder. Then, suddenly, the Soviet ships slowed down. Minutes passed. The world held its breath. And then, the ships began to turn around. No gunfire. No explosions. No war. At least, not yet. Inside the White House, a wave of relief spread across the room. Some advisors smiled. Others sighed deeply. But President Kennedy did not celebrate, because the crisis was far from over. The missiles already in Cuba remained. Construction continued, and according to intelligence reports, the Soviet military presence on the island was growing stronger. The danger was still very real. Across America, fear became part of everyday life. People lined up at supermarkets. Shelves emptied quickly. Families stocked in food, water, medicine, flashlights, batteries. Some built bomb shelters beneath their homes. Others dug holes in their backyards. Parents tried to appear calm for their children, but many secretly feared the worst. Schools practiced emergency drills. Teachers instructed children to hide beneath desks, to cover their heads, to stay calm. But even the youngest students sensed something frightening. They saw fear in their parents' eyes. They heard whispers at night, and they wondered, would there still be a tomorrow? The anxiety spread far beyond America. In Europe, people feared their cities would become battlegrounds. In Asia, governments prepared emergency plans. Across the world, millions prayed for peace. Never before had so many lives depended on the decisions of so few. Yet, unknown to the public, the most terrifying danger was hidden beneath the ocean. Soviet submarines had been sent toward Cuba. They carried a secret weapon, nuclear torpedoes, powerful enough to destroy entire fleets. But there was one terrifying fact. Communication with Moscow was extremely limited, and the submarine commanders had authority, under certain circumstances, to launch their nuclear weapons. One submarine in particular was facing unimaginable pressure. Its name was B-59. For days, it had remained submerged beneath the Atlantic. The air inside became unbearable. Temperatures climbed above 40 degrees Celsius. The crew was exhausted, sweating, struggling to breathe. Many had no idea what was happening above the surface. Had war already begun? Had Moscow been destroyed? Was the Soviet Union still standing? No one knew. Then, American destroyers located the submarine, not knowing it carried nuclear weapons. They began dropping small practice depth charges, harmless explosives intended to force the submarine to surface. But inside B-59, the crew did not know these explosions were warnings. The blasts shook the submarine violently. Lights flickered, metal groaned. Fear spread rapidly. Captain Valentin Savitsky believed war might already have begun. He became furious. The submarine was trapped, outnumbered, cut off from Moscow, and now, under attack. He reportedly shouted, "We're going to blast them now. We will die, but we will sink them all. The nuclear torpedo was prepared. One launch could kill thousands and perhaps trigger World War III. But there was one man aboard who hesitated. Vasily Arkhipov, calm, rational, courageous. He argued against launching. He insisted they surface first, verify the situation, avoid catastrophe. A heated argument followed. Minutes passed. The tension became unbearable. Finally, Arkhipov convinced the captain. The nuclear torpedo was not launched. The submarine surfaced, and unknowingly, one man's decision may have saved the world. But the crisis was becoming even more dangerous, because while politicians negotiated, military commanders prepared for war. Strategic bombers carrying nuclear weapons sat ready on runways. Missiles pointed toward enemy cities. Pilots waited inside cockpits. Engines warmed. Orders prepared. The United States raised its military alert level to DEFCON 2, one step below total nuclear war, the highest level ever reached in American history. The world had entered uncharted territory. Never before had nuclear war seemed so close. Never before had humanity stood so near the edge. And the worst day was still coming, a day later remembered as Black Saturday, the day when fear reached its highest point, the day when a spy plane was shot from the sky, the day when military leaders urged immediate invasion, the day when secret messages crossed oceans, and the day when civilization itself nearly ended. "13 Days That Shook the World." Part 3, Black Saturday. The most dangerous day in human history. A day many historians would later call the most dangerous day in the history of civilization. By now, the world had been living in fear for nearly 2 weeks. Every sunrise felt uncertain. Every headline carried anxiety. Every ringing telephone inside the White House could be the one announcing war. And on this day, that nightmare nearly became reality. Before dawn, President John F. Kennedy was already awake. He had slept only a few hours. Dark circles rested beneath his eyes. His advisors looked equally exhausted. The pressure was crushing. For 13 days, they had been making decisions that could determine whether millions would live or die. But while American leaders searched desperately for peace, the military situation in Cuba was becoming increasingly dangerous. Construction of missile sites continued. Thousands of Soviet troops remained on the island. Anti-aircraft missile systems were fully operational, and tensions among commanders were reaching a breaking point. Then, just after noon, everything changed. An American U-2 spy plane was flying high above Cuba. Its mission was simple: take photographs, gather intelligence, return safely. The pilot was a young Air Force officer named Rudolph Anderson Jr., experienced, professional, unaware that history was about to place him in its crosshairs. As his aircraft crossed Cuban airspace, radar operators tracked his movements. Soviet commanders on the ground watched carefully. Tensions were high, nerves were shattered, and then someone made a decision. A Soviet surface-to-air missile was launched. The rocket raced upward, faster and faster, toward the stratosphere. Seconds later, the sky exploded. The U-2 aircraft shattered. Fragments scattered through the clouds. Pilot Rudolph Anderson never had a chance. He became the only American combat casualty of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Inside the White House, the news arrived quickly. Shock swept through the room. The military immediately demanded retaliation. Some generals were furious. They argued, "The Soviets have attacked us. We must strike back immediately. Destroy the missile sites before it's too late." The pressure on Kennedy became unbearable. If he failed to respond, America might appear weak. But if he ordered airstrikes, the Soviets could retaliate, and retaliation could become nuclear war. The president sat quietly, thinking, listening, searching desperately for a path that avoided catastrophe. At the same time, something strange was happening in Moscow. The Soviet leader, Nikita Khrushchev, was becoming increasingly anxious. He never intended to start a nuclear war. He had hoped the missiles would strengthen Soviet security. Instead, the world was now standing on the edge of destruction. And then, Kennedy received a letter, a personal message from Khrushchev. The tone was emotional, almost desperate. Khrushchev wrote, "Why should we fight? Why should we destroy the world? If America promises never to invade Cuba, the Soviet Union will remove the missiles." The White House felt hope. Finally, a solution, a peaceful compromise. But the relief lasted only a few hours, because then a second message arrived, and this one was very different. The new letter was harsher, more demanding. This time Khrushchev demanded something else. America must remove its nuclear missiles from Turkey, missiles located close to Soviet territory. Only then would the Soviet Union withdraw its missiles from Cuba. The White House was stunned. Which letter represented Khrushchev's true intentions? The first or the second? Time was running out. Military leaders were urging war. And now, diplomatic negotiations had become even more complicated. That night, the atmosphere inside the White House became almost unbearable. Advisors argued intensely. Some insisted, reject the demand. Others warned, if negotiations fail, war becomes inevitable. Kennedy remained calm, but privately, he understood something terrifying. There might not be another chance. Outside, the world waited. Families sat around radios. News bulletins interrupted television programs. Churches filled with people praying. Parents tucked children into bed, unsure if the next morning would ever come. In underground bunkers, military officers monitored nuclear forces. American bombers carrying atomic weapons remained airborne. Missiles were ready. Submarines waited silently beneath the oceans. The Soviet Union prepared as well. Both superpowers stood fully armed, fully prepared, and dangerously afraid. Fear was everywhere, because nuclear war wasn't like previous wars. There would be no victory, no héroes, no safe places. Entire cities would vanish in seconds. Millions of innocent people would die. Fires would consume the skies. Radiation would poison the earth. Civilization itself might collapse. And perhaps the most terrifying fact of all, nobody truly knew what would happen after a full nuclear exchange. Scientists could only guess. The consequences were unimaginable. Late that evening, President Kennedy made a bold decision. He would publicly respond only to Khrushchev's first letter, the more peaceful one. America would promise not to invade Cuba, and secretly, through confidential channels, the United States would later remove its missiles from Turkey, quietly, without public humiliation for either side. It was a gamble, a huge gamble. If Khrushchev accepted, the world might survive. If he rejected the proposal, war could begin within days, perhaps within hours. That night, Kennedy waited, Khrushchev waited, and billions of people around the globe, without knowing it, waited with them. Would peace prevail, or would fear destroy everything humanity had built? The answer would arrive the very next day, a day when the world finally learned how close it had come to annihilation. "13 Days That Shook the World." Part 4, The Message That Saved the World, was one of the longest nights in human history. In Washington, President John F. Kennedy sat silently in the Oval Office. Outside the White House, the city appeared calm. Cars moved through the streets. Streetlights glowed softly, but behind closed doors, America was preparing for war. Military aircraft stood ready on their runways. Nuclear missiles waited underground. Bombers carrying atomic weapons circled through the skies. And all around the world, people slept uneasily, without knowing if they would wake up to peace or nuclear fire. Inside the Kremlin, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev faced the same terrible fear. The situation was spiraling beyond anyone's control. American warships surrounded Cuba. The United States was at DEFCON 2. Generals on both sides were demanding stronger action. And Khrushchev knew something terrifying. If even one missile was launched, there might be no way to stop what came next. He thought of Moscow, its streets, its children, its families. He thought of New York, Washington, Chicago, London, Paris, cities full of ordinary people, people who had never asked for war, people who simply wanted to live. Was political victory worth their destruction? For hours, Khrushchev walked alone, thinking, rereading Kennedy's proposal. America promised something important. The United States would not invade Cuba, and privately, American missiles in Turkey would eventually be removed. The agreement was not perfect, but it offered something priceless: peace. Then, on the morning of October 28th, Khrushchev made his decision. A radio message was prepared. The world waited nervously. Millions distant. And then, the announcement came. The Soviet Union had agreed to dismantle and withdraw its nuclear missiles from Cuba. Inside the White House, the message was received. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then, an enormous sense of relief spread through the room. Some advisors smiled. Others quietly lowered their heads. A few had tears in their eyes because they understood something extraordinary. Humanity had to step back from the edge of extinction. President Kennedy remained calm, but privately, he knew how close disaster had come, far closer than most people would ever imagine. The crisis was ending, but the danger had been terrifyingly real. In Cuba, missiles had been armed. American bombers had been prepared for attack. Submarines carried nuclear weapons beneath the ocean. Military commanders were ready to fight. And in several moments, the world had come within a single decision: of nuclear war. The withdrawal of Soviet missiles began quickly. Launch sites were dismantled. Equipment was loaded onto ships. International observers watched carefully. Photographs confirmed the missiles were leaving Cuba. Slowly, the tension began to fade. In return, the United States publicly promised not to invade Cuba. And secretly, months later, American nuclear missiles were quietly removed from Turkey. The agreement remained secret for many years because both leaders needed to protect their political image. But historians would later understand that compromise had helped save the world. The Cuban Missile Crisis lasted only 13 days. Yet, those 13 days changed history forever. Governments realized something frightening. Nuclear weapons had created a new kind of war, one where victory was almost meaningless, one where both sides could lose everything. After the crisis, the United States and the Soviet Union created a direct communication line, a special connection between Washington and Moscow. It became known as the hotline. If another crisis occurred, leaders could speak directly, without delay, without misunderstanding, because during those 13 days, everyone learned a painful lesson. Wars do not always begin because leaders want them. Sometimes, wars begin because of fear, miscommunication, greed, or a simple mistake. And there have been many mistakes. The submarine commander who almost launched a nuclear torpedo, the Soviet officers who shot down the American spy plane, military leaders pushing for invasion, politicians struggling to understand one another. At several moments, history could have taken a far darker path, but it didn't, because some people chose restraint. They chose dialogue. They chose patience, even under unimaginable pressure. And perhaps no story symbolizes this better than that of one relatively unknown man, Vasily Arkhipov, the Soviet naval officer aboard submarine B-59, the man who refused to approve the launch of a nuclear torpedo. If he had agreed, a nuclear explosion could have destroyed an American fleet. America would likely have retaliated, and World War III might have begun beneath the waves of the Atlantic Ocean. One man, one decision, and perhaps one of the greatest acts of courage in human history. Today, the missile sites in Cuba are silent. The ships have long disappeared. The politicians are gone. The speeches have faded into history. But the lesson remains. The Cuban Missile Crisis was not merely a political confrontation. It was a warning about hatred, about unchecked power, about the dangers of pride, and about how fragile peace can truly be. Even now, decades later, nations still possess nuclear weapons. Conflicts still exist, tensions still rise. And so, the story of those 13 days remains as important as ever. Because history is not only about the past, it is also a guide for the future. Imagine for a moment, if Khrushchev had refused, if Kennedy had ordered airstrikes, if Arkhipov had said yes, if fear had defeated reason, you might never have been born. Entire generations might never have existed. The world you know could have vanished before it truly began. But it didn't, because at the darkest moment, humanity chose another path. Not war, not destruction, but survival. And so, the story of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the story of 13 days that shook the world, is not only a story of fear, it is also a story of hope, a reminder that even in humanity's most dangerous hour, wisdom can prevail, peace can survive, and the future can still be saved. This was the story of 13 days that shook the world, the closest humanity has ever come to the end of everything, and the story of how we step back from the edge, the end.